Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Real Talk, Season 3. And I am joined here with my co-host, Lanisa Matthew, the Director of Organizational Development. So here we go again.
Tracy, let's do this. Let's
go. So you want to take the liberty of introducing our special guest?
So excited to have Dr. Bridget Cooper with us today. We lovingly call her Dr. B. And just for me, she has personally touched my life, and I am beyond grateful for who she is. Dr. B, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your practice?
Sure. So much to share there. So as you mentioned, I have 7 books in publication, but really what I do is not being an author. I work with individuals, companies, organizations of all sizes and types on fostering better communication, better stress management techniques. Really what it comes down to is that I help people see problems differently so that they can solve them easier. Helping people move the walls that they see between themselves and success or cohesion or adaptability to change, whatever that may be. So whether it's leadership assimilation, strategic planning, offsites, doing workshops, one-offs, keynotes, things like that. And I also have a cadre of executive and life coaching clients around the world. So I've been doing it for 20 years. I started the practice actually right after my younger daughter was born as an answer to doing something that had great and deep meaning and value for me, because I was trying to set an example for my 2 daughters, on what a life well lived meant. And so having my own business has really answered that call and let me live a life of real passion and purpose and connection.
Just a little background. I actually met Dr. B in my graduate program. I went a session with her. A few of us got selected to be able to do coaching with her and just to learn the depth of what she offers. And what I've learned in general is that as we continue to talk about well-being, we talk about how do we start taking care of us. You go as deep as you want to go. You choose that. You choose how much you want to continue to develop within yourself. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes there's joy, and sometimes there is opportunities to blend both worlds. And so what Dr. B has done for me is allowed me to be able to be brave enough to be able to really not be afraid of what are we each capable of. And the opportunities to be able to have her here today, to bring her to DCF, and just to have this platform. Dr. B, I am so excited to have you.
Oh my God. I knew you were going to set the bar high, but now we're just going to need to knock it down a little bit, okay? Because listen, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm kind of average, maybe like a skidge above average, but
no, it's so love to have you here, and thank you for being here.
I'm
truly
so excited.
Yeah, man. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
I would love DCF staff to really just learn a little bit about your background, your expertise, and just to be able to offer that up first would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you. So thank you for having me. I am super excited to continue this conversation. We had a little bit of a debrief last week to kind of just get to know each other on this level. And I think what's important, there's so much that goes into somebody's life and why somebody ends up in a moment like this. But for me, I've written a bunch of books. I've done a lot of consulting. I've done a lot of coaching. But for me, it has always come down to this, that all of the pain, all of the strife that I've ever experienced in my life has been because either myself or others around me could not appreciate where our power began and ended. So I am on this mission to help people understand where their power comes from, how to exercise it, and how to not either give it away or try to take it from other people. And I see this example over and over again in so many facets of our lives, that is the source of that discomfort. And so that's where the books come from. That's where the teaching comes from. That's where the coaching and leadership development work comes from, is really trying to help people tap in to their infinite power within. Never over, always from within.
That's so beautifully said.
Thank you.
I know you have had lived experience with DCF.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was funny because when we had our prep call, I think I dropped that one. And it's funny when you have conversations with people over the many years, even that I've known you forget what parts of your life have been revealed and not revealed. But my fifth book was my autobiography and also a kind of self-help journey for people who had been through and experienced trauma. And in that, I exposed this part of my life. But yes, so when I was 15 years old, I was actually I was arrested for running away and then put into our DCF and in Massachusetts and spent some time in a foster home, taken out of my school, doing the homeschooling thing when homeschooling was not a thing. And I think, I had a real appreciation for the care and concern of the DCF workers and the lawyers that were involved in the case in trying to get justice for me, because in effect, there was a sense of I was being punished for the fact that they couldn't help fix my family. So it was that kind of imbalance that was so powerful to me. And I think that, again, was one of the very early experiences that I had that helped me understand how people need to appreciate that and know what that looks like. So yeah, I applaud the work that you all do in this organization and the incredible resilience and care that comes from that, because I was on the inside of it, and I can only imagine what it felt like to be on the outside of it and feel powerless to change something that was so wrong and raw.
Wow. I'm speechless. Like, I don't know what to say in terms of your insight is powerful.
Thinking.
And it comes from your own personal experience. So understanding what our workforce deals with on a regular basis. Let's talk a little bit about your current book, Unflappable.
Yes. Thank you.
And it's titled Unflappable: How Smart People Quit Overthinking, Ditch the Drama, and Thrive at Work. So can you provide us with an understanding about, there's a section in there related to coping and healing.
Yes.
Can you differentiate the two
Absolutely.
for our listeners?
Yeah.
So that they can kind of ground themselves in your work, in your thought process around that.
Absolutely. So I think I'm going to back up the question a little bit because I think there's a frame around it that might be helpful. So Unflappable is my toolkit. So that was my 7th book, 8th if you count my dissertation, which I think we should. But anyway, it's my 7th book, and it is a compilation of all of the tools that I have been teaching in workshops, in one-on-one work with companies and organizations. And it is really practical, tactical tools to be able to take very complex issues and pieces of suffering that we have in our human condition and interpersonal relationships and boil it down to very simple to implement tools. And coping and healing mechanisms is also kind of a framework, in a sense, for Unflappable, because coping is what we've been doing and healing is what we're called to do. And so Unflappable gives form to that process by offering another 60 some odd tools aside from that framework to be able to start that healing journey. So, and it came about in everything, life imitates art, art imitates life, right? All of this. And what we have also talked about prior to this is that 6 years ago, I suffered a traumatic brain injury as part of a motor vehicle accident. And I had so many concussions, many of which were suffered through domestic violence and other accidents. And it was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And so all of the other concussions I had recovered from, this one, not so much. And so as a result, I ended up having a traumatic brain injury, which has left me with a number of impediments from processing speed to recall, focal abilities, visual, auditory processing disorders. I'm nauseous from the time I get up in the morning till I go to bed at night. I took my gum out for this podcast. I'm going to get it right back in when we get off this session. And I lost 25 IQ points. So in that process, Unflappable and all of the tools coming together in the way that they did was really about helping other people overcome some of the issues in their own lives. And I had to put coping and healing mechanisms front and center in my own recovery because I was very quick to go to my coping mechanisms. And coping mechanisms are things like, eating or overeating, binging on Netflix, doing, numbing out in some way, avoiding the experience, avoiding the processing of the problem just to get through. There are get through kinds of approaches, the things that do help us survive the moment, but they don't help us thrive or grow from the experience. And I did plenty of that, whether it was, Netflix or eating or, just feeling badly for myself or, scrolling social media or doing whatever it was, just trying to survive the moment. And I don't want to vilify those things because if they are, in fact, which they are, the way that we survive a moment, there is no blame or shame in using them. The issue comes when we use them to the expense of healing mechanisms, when we use the survival instinct perpetually. So if we are constantly in survival mode, then we rewire our entire nervous systems for that. And it's very hard then to break out and go into healing mechanisms. And healing mechanisms, again, robust catalog of them in Unflappable, but they are geared at processing the pain, at recognizing the grief in some of the losses, the great losses that we've experienced. It's moving the needle into seeing what needs to be changed in order for tomorrow to be different than today or yesterday. And that's where the rich work is. So it's not, again, that one or the other is bad or good. They're neutral in that sense. They're simply about being time-bound and having an ability to appreciate their difference. So I don't know if I explained that enough or...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I can get going, Tracy.
I appreciate it. It helps me to reflect as I listen to you in terms of the difference between the two and maybe even what I do relative to work.
Yeah.
And so if it's landing home with me, I can only imagine for our staff who will listen to this, how it will land for them. So everything that our staff does on a daily basis in terms of serving the families and the children that they've been called to serve is huge, to say the least. And so your differentiation of coping and healing brings me back to the first session of season 3 that we had around stress management.
Yeah.
And we talked about, Dr. Black was our guest there, and she talked about this idea or notion of boundaries and people putting up boundaries to preserve their self, if you will. And this idea of coping and healing really does coincide nicely with that. So can you speak from your perspective about this idea of we go to work and we're, from the time we get up to the time we go to bed, we're on autopilot. We just go, 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 go. And this notion of turning off the switch is unknown or foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
What is your perspective on it?
I love you. So what I like to pick apart sometimes is our default assumption that the way that we've been thinking about something is the way that it is, when in fact it is the way that we've been thinking about something. So you said that when we get up in the morning and we're on autopilot and we're going. I wanted to interrupt right there because I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
Because the autopilot in and of itself is a coping mechanism. So if we are doing autopilot in order to numb out and to not take in the gravity and intensity of what is happening, and we're doing it from start to finish, then we aren't actually allowing our brains and our bodies to recognize the incoming hits that are happening. So it isn't about necessarily being open to all and being impartial and just caught up in every moment and riding all of the roller coasters that can happen throughout a day when you're talking about this particular job. but about recognizing I need to not feel the intensity of this moment intentionally, instead of saying I need to feel nothing from the moment I wake up until the time I clock out or beyond. Because what that does is it almost becomes a problem in and of itself. So it's adding to the problems that are already happening. And I don't blame anyone for doing it, because I can only imagine how it feels to try to move through our day like that with those incoming hits. However, when we take intentionality out of that, when we take breaks out of that process, we don't allow for some of that recovery to happen, because our bodies are simply on freeze. And so I think that, whether it is, I'm going to need to go in this house and I can only imagine what I'm going to see and I can only imagine what I'm going to experience, and I'm going to take care of me when I get back out. I'm going to take care of them when I'm in there, and I'm going to take care of me when I get back out, versus going in and simply just going from thing to thing and just holding their breath until they get to 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever that timeout is.
So you're saying that you intentionally, whether you say it, whether you think it, you handle the work.
Right.
And then you say, after this particular meeting, after this particular visit, after this particular court appearance,
right,
I'm going to now take care of myself.
Correct. I what I'm going to liken it to is when we were wearing masks during the pandemic and the lockdown, is that we put on our mask, and we went into the stores, we went into communities, and then we took the mask off and we took a deep breath and we wiped our face and we did all that we had to do, and we unfogged our glasses and like all the stuff we had to do, and paid attention to, oh, that was hard. That was hard to go into some place and have interactions and not be able to see all of the facial gestures, feel fearful. Like I hope, took more of those moments in that, because it was so new. The problem with, I think, that a lot of the people who are listening face is that they've been doing it for weeks, months, years, decades. So it's, if we had gone through the pandemic that way, I can only imagine how we would have fallen into those coping mechanisms.
Yeah. I love what I hear is your strategy.
Yeah.
And again, you said the word intentionality. Sometimes for me, it's what I took away from it is giving ourselves language to speak to ourselves, to give ourselves permission to put us back into the equation when I think about our staff. So when you said that example about, I'm intent, like, my mindset is I'm going to take care of this family, I'm going to walk in, take care of them. But when I walk out, I'm going to take, even it's 5 minutes, because time I know is precious. It's back to back to back. Our phenomenal staff who always uplift and everybody else.
Yeah.
But I love what, for me, my takeaway, Dr. B, is that you said in those moments of how do we incorporate these strategies of just giving ourselves the language to be able to give ourselves that moment, but then taking even that moment for 5 minutes. And so I hope people can utilize that and practice that. Because I guess that's really, I believe what Tracy and I coming together is, how do we bring these techniques? How do we bring these tools when on the ground, when there's a moment? We talk about recovery. I love that you talk about that, because sometimes staff feel like there's no time.
Right.
And so how do we continue, or just your thoughts about, I love it because real talk is coping. I think we all are on autopilot of, again, earlier talking about Starbucks is my go-to relief. I feel very good about that. But then it doesn't.
So does Starbucks. They're so appreciative of you.
My husband does not feel too good about that either. But it's all right. But it doesn't mean very well. But it doesn't deal with whatever it is that I am not attending to. Again, back to your point about what initially Dr. Black was talking about, filling our wells.
Right.
She talked about in our first podcast. I love how you talk about here, though, the strategies, coping versus healing. One, distinguishing that there is a difference between the two. And both must be acknowledged. But also to your point about thoughts about recovery, Dr. B, what do you think?
So speaking of recovery, another way of thinking about coping and healing mechanisms, if you want an analogy, is when your kid or you are sick and you have a fever. So a coping strategy is to give them Tylenol, bring down the temperature, right? What it doesn't do, if it is bigger than just a cold, is actually address the underlying disease that is creating the fever. So taking the Tylenol, great, cool. Now you're not burning up anymore. However, if you don't take care of the underlying infection, you are not going to cure the problem. It is not going to move along. You're just going to keep hitting it with Tylenol until such time as you either run out or it gets worse. And that's, to me, that is the difference. There's nothing wrong with giving them Tylenol. It's that if that's all that you do, then you have not moved the needle on that.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. So in terms of interventions, I think, one of the things that we tend to make bigger than it is what is required to be able to make shifts that are meaningful. So sure, it would be great to go to daily therapy or to have, an hour to do yoga every morning or whatever that is. And I understand completely how hard that is to find those bigger blocks of time to do some of this bigger work, whether it's, reading a giant book or what have you. But these places of healing happen in moments. They happen in fractions of moments. So simply, and I have my clients do this, putting their hand on their heart to anchor themselves in their own energetic pattern and taking a deep breath and saying, this is so hard. Like, I need to come from consistency, or I need to come from love here, and I am finding it so hard to find that, right? I need to come from accountability, and I am afraid they are not going to listen to me. I need to come from compassion, and I am so angry at these people, right? Like, whatever that is, of just acknowledging the distress that you are in, because what often happens with our nervous systems is we tell them to shut down in the moment when they want to activate. And we create in our own minds, our own spirits, our own kind of mental processing and our own bodily chemistry, a sense of distrust, because we're walking into what it is, and we are telling ourselves not to think about it or not to see it or not to address it. So part of those, grabbing those moments in between those experiences, is to anchor ourselves in truth. And just in doing that, we are meeting one of our core needs, which is validation.
So beautifully said.
Wow.
We're rolling.
So beautifully said, Dr. B. Where I think what I appreciate in what you just shared right now is really listening. Also, what I took away too is listening to our bodies, taking that breath, that we do respond, whether we recognize it or not, that our body takes a hit with emotions that we carry on a day-to-day basis. As we continue to just, really reflect and take in what you have offered up, are there any last techniques or tools that you may be able to just offer the staff up around this?
Absolutely. So as you were asking it, I'm thinking, well, there's like 60 some odd more in the book. Which ones do I pick? So I think one of the things, but bouncing off what you said about in the body, so the research proves this out, that we hold trauma, we hold joy, we hold our experiences in the very fibers of our body, in the cells, the processes, the neural connections, all of that. So I think beginning with a respect for that our traumatized mind is also a traumatized body, that a stressed mind is a stressed body. So if we're looking to create any other experience, we have to tap into both. So I could talk all day about how to change your thoughts and think about things differently, but if we don't ground back in how the body is responding to those moments, we aren't doing ourselves the service that we can. So we've heard about mindfulness, we've heard about deep breathing and all of that, but that actually does work, because when we take a deep breath, whether it is a box breathing of, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, whatever it is, however we want to do our breath, as long as we are taking in a deep breath, our body actually is designed to take that as information that we are not in danger. And when we are going in and out of these stressful situations, there is real and I'm sure persistent danger in these spots, whether for us or for the people who we are serving. And so our bodies being traumatized in that way and feeling danger, they need to be reset as often and as long as possible. So even if it's just sitting in your car or, standing in a parking lot, wherever you need to be, sitting on a bench for 30, 60, 120 seconds and getting our breath back and sending that notification to our brain to release a different set of chemicals that are saying we are calm. And that, it sounds simple, but it really does work. When they've done actual brain scans of people who are stressed and then scanned them after they've taken some deep breaths, their heart rate has changed, their blood pressure has changed, the colors of their brain have changed. And so that really does help to insulate us from that next hit. And in that same vein of challenging the thought that we're having, because if the thought we're having, we love to be in the same spot, be very regulated machines in a sense. So if we are thinking a thing, our body responds with a feeling and a chemical reaction to that thought. And then that experience then reinforces the initial thought we have. So whether it's joy or fear, anger or excitement, it is regulated and self-regulated over and over again. So one of the hacks of shifting that is if you're sitting, let's say you're sitting in your car and you're thinking, when I walk in there, I'm going to be so upset because I know that they're not going to have done this thing. Even if you simply, and this is not to disbelieve your assumption, it's to create a different chemical reaction in your body so you're better prepared for that moment in a less stressed situation, is you could also say, or they might surprise me. Or there might be something else going on. Or just dropping in the or, again, is not to say that you're not right, because we all love to be right, and you probably are. But if you choose being right over being calm and happy, that might be a change you want to consider making.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Definitely something for us to think about.
That's right.
For the staff to think about, and hopefully they can begin to incorporate this way of thinking and these practices into their everyday.
Every day is right. And what I appreciate about that is that, Dr. B, what I appreciate about you is that you not only just take theory, but you walk the walk. So I appreciate coming here to share your lived experience, your personal injuries that have happened, but you didn't let us stop you.
No.
That's the beauty. That's the power we all have. It's a choice. And it is really hard sometimes, but it's a choice. I appreciate you because you have shown by walking the walk that these strategies in which you've lifted up today, it's not just theory, but it can be applied. And there are benefits that await because you took the time to do it. So I hope for myself, even for my takeaways, how do I stop and just be mindful of my own thoughts in the days that we run so quickly to X, Y, and Z? But thank you for being an example here with us today and lifting up our staff.
It is honestly, and I say this with every bit of authenticity, it is my honor. The job that you have, having again been raised in a domestic violence situation and a neglect situation, what I believe your passion and purpose is for this work is deep and big. And whatever resources any of us can provide to make that weight lighter, to make this path easier for you, I'm in. So thank you for this.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So I'm excited to say that Dr. B is coming back for a second episode with us. And this time we're going to focus on stop, center, move. And I'm excited to hear about the differentiation between the three of those elements. So thank you so much, Dr. B.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. That was Real Talk.